So I was in a meeting with some folks while attending Val Expo. I taught USPAP all day, and then had some very fine folks want to meet with me, and I got to meet with them and got to know them a little bit. Had a great little conversation. Had an adult beverage. Had a really good time, and we just got to chatting, and I said, most appraisers haven't read USPAP. A lot of appraisers haven't even opened the flipping book, right? And we're going to talk about that for a second. But one of the gentlemen at the table said, "Oh, I've read it." I said, "You've read the entire book?" "Yes, I've read it. I read that." And consequently, he's not an appraiser. And he's not an attorney. I said, "You've read the entire USPAP publication?" He said, "Yes." He said, "You've got to understand, though, I read legal briefs for fun." Really nice young man, but his definition of fun and mine are just a little bit different. But I want to talk a little bit about maybe making USPAP a little bit easier for you. And why that's important. Imagine just for a second, you're in the hot seat. You're in a courtroom, and you're being asked some difficult questions. Now, I know many of my listeners right now are saying, "Bryan, stop. This podcast isn't for me because I'm never going to go to court. I'm never going to do court work. I'm not going to be an expert witness. I'm not going. Guess what? If you get a subpoena, you're going to court. Whether you want to be there or not, you're going to court. Maybe you're a witness. Maybe you're a fact witness. Look that up. Not an expert witness. You're a fact witness. Maybe you're an expert witness. Maybe you're a defendant. I hope you don't find yourself in that situation, but you could. You're in the hot seat. Here comes opposing counsel. I've whispered in their ear as a litigation support specialist what to ask you. Appraiser. Did you develop your appraisal and write your appraisal report in accordance to USPAP, yes or no? What do you have to say? I mean, you have to say yes to that. Because if you don't, you're done. You're toast. I mean, you signed a certification swearing that you complied with USPAP. So we call that a lead question. I'm leading you down a path I want you to go. We know you're going to say yes to that answer. I had a student one time say, "Well, I tried to," or "I hope so," right? But you're going to say yes. And say it with confidence. "Yes, I did." Now we got you. We got you where we want you. Here we go. Great. How many standards are there? How many statements are there? What's the purpose of USPAP? And guys, that's not a good answer. Come on back and I'll give you some suggested answers and some other suggestions to help you comply with uniform standards. Hi, this is Bryan Reynolds. You're listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast, brought to you as always by the great folks over at Appraiser eLearning. You need some education? Check us out at appraisereLearning.com. I've got a brand new course out. It's called Appraising Limited Market Properties. Sign up for that via virtual. I also have a brand new online class. It's a self-paced, and that is the Appraiser's Guide to Inspections, right? Appraiser's Guide to Inspections. Check that out, and you can navigate that at your convenience. By the way, on that course, you get to do a ride along with me. That's what I'm going to call it. I had someone here in my town follow me around and videotape me going to look at 2 properties. So if you take that online course, Appraiser's Guide to Appraisal Inspections, there'll be 2 videos in there where you're kind of with me doing an appraisal inspection. Very cool. So come check that out if you need some CE. We'd be honored and thankful for you to do that. So let's get back to the topic at hand, navigating USPAP, right? First of all, don't guess to a question like that in court and be wrong. That's bad. If you don't know the answer, say, I don't know. I can't recall. I don't remember. Those are truthful, number one, and you've just sworn to be truthful. It's the most correct question, answer to the question, because if you don't know, you don't know. And God forbid you guess and be wrong. I was I'm not an attorney. I was playing attorney in a mock trial one time. And I was asking these types of questions, and the witness said, there's 5 standards. And so when we circled back around, I said, so, let's look at the book here. There's actually 10 standards. A moment ago, when I asked you that question, you said 5 standards. What I'm going to ask that you do from here on out is don't guess. If you don't know the answer to a question, just say, I don't know. I assume you guessed a moment ago when you said 5. When there's really 10. He said, no, I thought there were 5. I said, oh, okay, then you were just wrong, weren't you? See, that's even worse. But think about how bad this sounds for a minute, ladies and gentlemen. I developed my appraisal and I wrote my report in accordance to USPAP. Great. Answer these questions about USPAP. I don't know. I don't recall. I don't remember. I don't know. Well, then we're going to go in for the kill, and I'm going to whisper over to the attorney. Go ask. And the attorney's going to come up and say, you really expect this judge or jury to believe that you developed your appraisal and you wrote your appraisal report in accordance to USPAP when you can't tell us anything in the book? I mean, if you can't recall anything in the book, how do you know you developed your appraisal and you wrote your report in accordance to USPAP? If you were serving on the jury right now, would you believe you? Ooh, this sounds really bad, guys. Now, no one expects you to remember everything verbatim, right? Nobody expects you to recall the page number or what particular standard rule requires what. And here's a really good answer if you find yourself, and by the way, you do need to know at least a couple of these answers, like the purpose of USPAP. We all ought to know that one, okay? But if you find yourself in that, what you could do is say, again, be honest. And when they go in for that kill, what you could say is, well, I'm sorry I can't answer those questions off the cuff. However, I do have the copy of that publication in my library. And I even have a digital copy, which is searchable, and I can find those answers to you quite quickly. And then I'd punch the attorney back because I couldn't help myself. I would probably say, like most attorneys don't know all the state laws in which they practice, I can't recite all my requirements either. Now, that being said, guys, I'm not trying to give you a free pass. You, as the appraiser, needs to know a little bit about the book, about the document, about your minimum requirements. So let's break it down. Let's make it a little bit easier. That's the goal of this podcast. And I've got some visuals here, and if you're podcasting, you can't see them. But if you go over to our YouTube channel, Appraiser eLearning, you can watch this video in addition to listening to it. All right. But all I'm doing for my listeners right now is holding up the USPAP book. It's a pretty big book. I mean, there's a lot of pages. And if you know me, if you've listened to me, or if you've been in my class, you know I'm not an avid reader. I wish I was. I mean, I really wish I was. That's how you get smart, and I could use some smarts. I'm just not. It's hard for me to get excited about sitting down and reading something. I get bored, I get tired, I get sleepy. I'd rather be hunting or fishing or on the water or in the water or under the water or taking a nap or having an adult beverage rather than reading. I'm just being honest with you. It's hard for me to get excited about it. I do have a passion for learning. I want to get smart, right? I could use some of that. So I know reading helps you along those lines, and I'm trying to do better. You hear me talk about Who Moved My Cheese. I've read that multiple times. I did read a book not long ago. It's called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. If you haven't read that book, it's an excellent, I read it cover to cover. It's an excellent book. Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. I love that book. And again, I'm trying to do better. It's on my to-do list to start reading with regularity. But let's break this down. I don't want to sit down and read this whole flipping publication. I'm a USPAP instructor. I probably should read it cover to cover every time it comes out. But let's break this down. Let's make it a little simpler. This big, lengthy publication has more than just USPAP in it. It has advisory opinions in it. It has frequently asked questions in it. And those are not binding. They're advice. Now, it's pretty good advice. It comes from the Appraisal Foundation, and they will typically reference binding portions of USPAP. But you're not going to be charged and disciplined for a violation of the frequently asked questions, right? So let's break this down. 58 pages. This little bit right here is the entire USPAP publication. This, in my right hand, which is everything else, a lot of stuff, is advice on USPAP. 58 pages. That's it. Now I'm going to make it even easier. If you're a listener who is a real property appraiser, sometimes folks call that a real estate appraiser. Those are two different terms, real property and real estate. That's another podcast. You're actually a real property appraiser, right? You appraise real estate or the rights inherent of owning a piece of real estate. Maybe we have personal property appraisers listening to the broadcast. I had people in my class not too terribly long ago that specialize in appraising jets, airplanes, right? I had a lady in my class one time that appraised horses. How cool is that? That's pretty cool. So there are different disciplines out there, and this book covers those. Maybe you're an assessor. Maybe you're a review appraiser. Maybe you're a business appraiser. Hey, come appraise my business. Let's see what it's worth. But if you're a real property appraiser, I'm going to make this real easy for you. 24. 24. If you remember 24, it's the first 24 pages of USPAP that you're held accountable to. Now, if you're a review appraiser, you got standards 3 and 4, so a little bit more. But if you're a real property appraiser, you're appraising houses for refinances and purchase transactions. You're appraising commercial properties in the same vein. 24 pages. That's standard 1. Standard 1 is the development or the appraisal. Standard 2 is the appraisal report, the method in which you communicate the results of the appraisal. Standard 1 is the appraisal. Standard 2 is the report mechanism. Two different things. The rules that come before those, I'm going backwards. The rules that become before standard 1 and 2, and that's your competency rule, your ethics rule, your scope of work rule, your record keeping rule, your jurisdictional exception rule, all those rules. And then before the rules are the definitions, and the definitions are binding. And then prior to the definitions is the preamble, which is binding. That's it. 24 pages. Read the first 24 pages of USPAP and then read them again. Make sure you're doing everything in those 24 pages. And I'm going to give you a little bit more help with this. So don't go anywhere. Hang in there. The first thing I want to do is talk about some of the answers to those questions. I already told you there's 10 standards. There are no statements. All the statements were retired. We had 10. They got down to 5. They finally retired the last 5. So we have 0 statements, although they could come back. And they had the same authority as a standard. They were binding. But we presently have 0 statements. But really what you need to know is over here on this page. Guys, I ask you, what was the purpose of USPAP? It's the first sentence of page 1 of the book. And these line items are very handy. There's line items in your USPAP publication, which I love. Please don't ever get rid of those, Appraisal Foundation. The purpose of Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice is to promote and maintain a high level of public trust in appraisal practice. That's the purpose. It's to promote and maintain a high level of public trust. Now, it goes on to say, by establishing requirements for appraisers. Now, we're going to come back to this page in just a second, because I want to keep breaking this down for you. I want to make it a little simpler, a little less scary for you. There's actually opportunities in here. Let me give you one in particular. Can you take an assignment that you're not competent to do? You would think the answer would be, well, Lord, no, you can't take something you're not competent to do. But USPAP gives you that flexibility. Hey, I've never done that property before. I've never done any property anywhere remotely similar to it. But if you entrust me with it, I'll do it anyway. There's things you got to do, but USPAP gives you that flexibility, right? You have to be competent, or you have to get competent, or you have to withdraw. And that flexibility that allows for is you disclose your lack of competency, you take all steps needed to get competent, and then you disclose it again in the report. It gives you that flexibility. I preach all the time, ladies and gentlemen, that you as a practicing appraiser can do almost anything. I did not say you could do anything. Don't put words in my mouth. Don't say Bryan Reynolds said I could do anything, so that's why I did it. I never said that. I said you could do almost anything. As a practicing appraiser with scope of work, with extraordinary assumption and hypothetical conditions, you could do almost anything. So expand your brain. How does this book achieve its authority? After all, the Appraisal Foundation is not a governmental agency. They are a nonprofit. They're a nonprofit organization. They don't have any legal authority over you. So how does this book achieve its authority? This book, USPAP, is not a legal document. How does it achieve its authority? Well, let's go back to page 1 of the book. So if we go down to about, I think it's line item 36, somewhere in there. Here we go. I'm going to start at 35 because that echoes what I just told you. USPAP does not establish who or which assignments must comply. Neither the Appraisal Foundation nor its Appraisal Standards Board is a governmental entity, with the power to make, judge, or enforce law. Here's the driving force. If you're a trainee, listen to me. You're going to see this on an exam, I promise you, at some point. What's the driving force of USPAP? Why do appraisers have to adhere to USPAP? How does USPAP have authority, right? Any kind of question like this, an appraiser must comply with USPAP when either the service or the appraiser is required by law, regulation, or agreement with the client. There's one more. Individuals may also choose to comply. Now, I like to call that CARL, C-A-R-L. Choice, agreement, regulation, and law. That's how USPAP achieves its authority. That's why you as an appraiser have to comply with USPAP. Let me give you the best piece of advice I think that I can give you. Standard 1 is the development. Standard 2 is the reporting. Normally, someone is looking at your report and they'll find a deficiency or they won't find a deficiency. It's really impossible for someone to know what you did. For instance, no sales in the last 36 months. What am I talking about? Well, I'm probably talking about the prior sales of the subject property. In accordance to Standard Rule 1.5, we're supposed to analyze any prior sales, right? Standard 1.5B, I believe. 1.5A is listings and the contract and all that good stuff. So I just said in the report, no prior sales in the last 36 months. And you have a copy of my report. You weren't asked to review it. You found it on the sidewalk. I don't know. You found it. And you're just looking at it and you're like, gosh, Bryan said there's no prior sale in the last 36 months. And I really think that property's sold. And you get curious and you look it up and lo and behold, that property did sell. It sold last year for $150,000. And that's not mentioned in my report. In fact, I'm saying there's none. Do I have a problem? Yeah, I've got a problem. Is it fair to say Bryan didn't analyze that prior sale? Now, most people think, yeah, that's fair. I don't think it is. I had this debate with an attorney when I was in investigator training, and the attorney said, we're going to get you. And I said, well, wait a minute. You're going to get this appraiser for a Standard Rule 1.5B violation? Yep. I said, based on what? Well, because they didn't have an analysis of that transfer in the report. Okay, well, I'm going to concede that this appraiser I'm working with, that I'm consulting with, I'll concede that this appraiser has a report deficiency. How do you know what this appraiser did or didn't do? The attorney caught on pretty quickly and he said, well, we checked the work file. We checked the work file. If it's not in the work file, the appraiser didn't analyze the prior sale. I said, just a moment. We will now concede that there may be a work file deficiency. How do you know what this appraiser did or did not do? And he finally, light bulb went off. He finally said, well, we asked him. I said, oh, okay. You asked the appraiser and they admit, yep, I didn't analyze that prior sale. And guys, if you didn't do it, you didn't do it. I'm not talking about lying. I teach this course, right? I'm not trying to advocate that you be unethical, right? If you didn't do it, you didn't do it. But if you did do it, don't accept punishment for something you didn't do wrong. Yeah, I have a reporting error. I have a work file deficiency. I did analyze that prior sale. It slipped through the cracks. I guess I cloned a report. Maybe you shouldn't clone reports, right? If I get 3 whoopings for 2 things I did wrong, I'm not happy about it, right? Now, if I deserve 3, I deserve 3. Bring them on. But if I only made 2 mistakes, don't punish me for 3. So let's really talk about this for a minute. Here's what I challenge every appraiser to do that's listening or watching. When you get back to your office, pull out an appraisal report. Maybe it's the last appraisal report you did. Pull out an appraisal report. Right next to it, put a copy of your USPAP publication and go to Standard Rule 2 because that's the reporting, right? So let's go there together right now. If you're watching, you can follow along. So Standard 2 does not dictate the form, format, or style of real property appraisal reports. They don't care. So you've heard people say, well, you could write it on a cocktail napkin. It'd probably be more than one cocktail napkin, but yeah, you could. You could pull a curtain down and write a report on a curtain, and you could be USPAP compliant. So this first part, 2-1, is really, it's kind of ethics. Clearly and accurately set forth the appraisal in a manner that's not misleading, contains sufficient information to enable the intended user to understand, and clearly and accurately disclose all assumptions, extraordinary assumptions, hypothetical conditions, and limiting conditions, okay? But here's what I want you to do. This is your homework assignment. Ready? This really, honestly, guys, is probably the best advice I think I can give to try and double check yourself and make sure you're complying with USPAP. Pull out, read standard 1 and make sure you're doing all that too. But with your report content, come to line item 589. It's on page 20 of the 24 pages I told you to look at. It says the content of an appraisal report must be appropriate for the intended use of the appraisal, and at a minimum, state the identity of the client. That's number 1. See, so it's standard rule 22A, Roman numeral 1. What I want you to do is go to standard rule 22A, Roman numeral 1. That's line item 591 in your USPAP book, and pretend it's a question. State the identity of the client, question mark. And you have to find the answer in your appraisal report. If you can find the answer in your appraisal report, good job. If you can't find the answer in your appraisal report, you better add stuff to your appraisal report to answer these questions. Look at the next one. State the identity of any other intended users. Okay, well, I put the client as the sole intended users. No additional intended users are identified by the appraiser. Check mark, got that one. State the intended use of the appraisal. Okay, well, I got it. In this case, I'm working for a property owner. They're thinking about selling their house. That's why they engage me. The intended use of this appraisal is to assist the client in making an internal decision-making, more specifically to potential marketing of the subject property. Okay? Put what the intended use is. Just make these all questions, and you've got to find the answers. Now, I'm not going to read all these to you, but I am going to go to 2 that are pretty common. If you go to standard rule 22A, Roman numeral 12, it says, when an opinion of highest and best use was developed by the appraiser, state that opinion and, look at this, summarize the support and rationale for that opinion. Guys, this is critical. The 1004 form, the URAR you fill out every day, doesn't give you that option. On page 1, it says, is the present use the highest and best use? You say yes or no. If you check no, it says, please explain. If you check yes, you're done, right? No, you're not done. You might be done with that particular form, but you're not complying with the applicable reporting requirements of Standard Rule 22A, Roman numeral 12. You've got to put your support and rationale for that opinion somewhere. Guys, put something in there. If you have something in there, I can try and help you. If you hire me as a consultant, here it is. Well, I don't think that was adequate. Okay, well, I think it is. Now we're going to argue. We've got an argument, and we'll argue whether or not it was sufficient or not, right? And the trier of fact will render a decision. But if you have nothing in there, I can't magically make it appear in your report. You're going to have to take your lumps. Finally, I'm going to show you one more here. And the reason I want to highlight this one is this is a common error appraisers are making. Don't let it be you. Standard Rule 22A, Roman numeral 13 says, clearly and conspicuously. What's that mean? Well, it means it stands out. It's not lost in the fine print. It's not like a telephone book and I can't find. It stands out. And we can argue that. But if you put it all in bold or all in caps or put it in purple font or underline it or put it on one sheet of paper, I don't care. Make it stand out. That's what clearly and conspicuously means. There's 3 things you have to do when you use an extraordinary assumption or hypothetical condition with regard to the report. And this is a longer conversation than we have right now. Look back at the definitions of these and also look at standard 1 when you can use them. Remember, I said you can do almost anything. I didn't say you could do anything. But the common reporting errors are this. Appraisers are doing pretty good with clearly and conspicuously. We can argue that. Number 2, state all extraordinary assumptions and hypothetical conditions on line item 638. Appraisers are doing pretty good with that. Here's what appraisers are doing horrible with. State that their use may have affected the assignment results. Appraisers aren't putting that in there. And this is a real problem, guys, because this is not, oh, you missed one, you got a 90, you got an A minus instead of an A plus. It's not that, oh, you missed one and you get a B plus. This is a pass or fail test, ladies and gentlemen. You either complied with the applicable reporting requirements of USPAP or you didn't. It's that simple. And while you got 2 out of 3 here, you got to get all 3. And that line item 639 is a common mistake appraisers are making. So please don't fall in that trap. Okay? Don't find yourself in that. Again, you call me up and say, hey, they're getting me on this EA and HC thing, and I think I did okay. And I look through your report and I say, hey, where's your statement that use of the extraordinary assumption may have affected the assignment result? I don't know. It's in there somewhere. Well, I've read your report 3 times. I don't like to read. So point it out to me. Well, I don't know. Maybe I didn't put it in there. I can't magically make it appear. You have to make sure you do all 3 of these things. And pre-printed forms don't comply with USPAP. Forms don't comply with USPAP. I'm going to say that one more time. Forms don't comply with USPAP. Appraisers do. Or they don't, but they're supposed to. So do yourself a favor. Read the first 24 pages of USPAP. Read it again. Take the test. I'm going to call it the USPAP test, and really that's not, because there is a 15-hour class with a USPAP test. Call it Bryan's USPAP test. There you go. Let's see. Bryan's USPAP test, B-U-T. Ooh, I'm glad I stopped at 1T. Bryan's USPAP test. All right. Take it. Take it on yourself. Grade yourself. Nobody's watching. The USPAP police aren't in your back room, but they might end up looking and getting hands on your appraisal report. So take your Bryan's USPAP test. Go to Standard Rule 22A, put your appraisal report right next to it, go through each one of those items, and make sure you have it in your report. If you get charged with a Standard 1 violation, we can argue that. Now, if you didn't do it, you didn't do it. And we're not going to lie about it. We're going to fess up and use it as a learning opportunity, right? But Standard 1 stuff, we can almost argue about all of that. Standard 2, you either have it in your report or you don't. Guys, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're making lots of money. And maybe take a little mini vacation, if you will. I've got to run. I'm late for an appointment. Until next time, this is Bryan Reynolds. You've been listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast. If you'd like to be a guest on the program, please reach out to Ben, Kim, Hal, Jim, myself, or Miss Claire at my office, and we'll try and get you on the program. And until next time, happy appraising.
The Appraisal Update Podcast is brought to you by Appraiser eLearning.